If you are designing a road, that road will probably lead to another road, so it's important for us to be able to tie corridor models together. In this session, we will create a simple intersection. Let's do a quick tour, take a look at what we have. Right here, I've got an existing ground surface called EG. If I zoom in, I have an alignment, an east-west alignment called Barrington Avenue. I also have a north-south alignment called Summit Street. If we pan the drawing over, we can see that I have pulled surface profiles for both of these alignments, and I have created finished grade profiles for both. So right here, I've got the finished grade profile for Barrington Avenue. It's called Barrington Ave FG for finished grade. Summit Street is similar. The profile is called Summit Street-FG. Now, when you create the profiles for your intersection, it's important that they cross at a common point. Let me show you how I did that. Basically, I designed my profile for Barrington Avenue first, and then Summit Street, the alignment starts at the Barrington Avenue alignment, so that would mean that the profile elevation for Summit Street at this point would match the Barrington Avenue profile elevation. Let me show you how I found the elevation there. I selected the alignment, and then I right-clicked, and I came down and chose Inquiry. Let me drag the inquiry box on screen. My inquiry type is going to be based on an alignment. I'm going to choose alignment, station, offset, and profile elevation at point. It says, okay, which alignment are you interested in? I'm interested in Barrington Avenue. Okay, which profile are you interested in? I'm interested in Barrington Avenue finished grade. Now it says, okay, which point are you interested in? I'm interested in the intersection of my alignment of both the Summit Street and the Barrington Avenue alignment. If I click, I can see right here the profile elevation at that location is 293.03. Let me close this. So when I created my proposed profile for Summit Street, you can see I started that at elevation 293.03. So my intersection is both horizontal and vertical. Let's go ahead and build our intersection. We're going to make one other assumption here. I would like both pavement sections for these roads to be the same in width and depth. So we'll keep things simple. It'll give us fewer assemblies. So same assembly for both. Let's talk about curb returns. Let's say I want to do a 25-foot curb return here. I'm going to create some offsets quickly. We'll generate the geometry for the curb return. Offset distance is going to be 12 feet. I'll offset my Barrington Avenue alignment up. That happens to fall right along the edge of pavement here. I'm still in the command. Let me offset Summit Street to the right and left. I will then come up and launch the trim command. And I'll select my polylines I just made, and I'll trim off the other polyline I just made. Then we'll launch the fillet command. We'll use a radius of 25 feet, and I will fillet this polyline to this one. I'll press the space bar to go back into the command, and I will turn or fillet this polyline into this one. So you can see I've got polylines now that run the full length, which is fine. What I'm going to do now is I'd like to turn these into alignments. I'll be using these as baselines in a little bit, so let's go ahead and do that. To turn this into an alignment, I am going to come up and open the alignment menu. I'll choose create alignment from objects, and I would like to generate these in a clockwise fashion. I would like them both to be drawn clockwise. We'll talk about why that's important in a little bit. So I'm going to select this on the closer to the right end. I'll press enter so you can see the direction there. Let's press enter and accept that, and I'm going to call this northeast curb return. We'll keep the FDOT proposed style. I don't need labels on this. I don't want to add any curves or anything. And we'll go ahead and erase the existing entity. Let me click OK. So this is now an alignment, northeast curb return. Let's create the next one. I'll go to alignment, create alignment from objects, and I want this to be clockwise. So I'm going to grab this closer to this end. I'll press enter. I could always reverse it here if it was incorrect. Let's call this one northwest curb return. And we're going to keep the same properties we had before. I'll click OK. So there we go. I've got a couple alignments. We'll take care of these, or we'll utilize these in a little bit. So I have my corridor through here. Let's zoom in. This corridor model is actually perfect. I mean, the lanes, the curb and gutter, everything is perfect until I get to the curb return. Once I get to the curb return, this area here I don't need. The outside's good, nothing wrong with this, until I get to the end of the curb return here, and then it's perfect again. So what I'm going to do, let's create a region in the intersection area here. I'm going to split the corridor. Let me click my corridor. I'll go to corridor properties. And then the region that I have, I'm going to right click and I'll choose split. And I would like to split this. I'll choose the end point of the curb return on this end. And then I'll choose the end point of the curb return on this end. Trying to make that as easy to see as possible. I'll press enter when finished. There we go. Now I need to make an assembly to go in that area. So let's go ahead and click OK. I'll rebuild the corridor. Doesn't look any different. I just basically split this. What I'd like is an assembly that only has geometry on one side. I don't need anything here on the left. So let's create a derivative or a copy of our full road section. I'm going to launch the copy command and I'll copy this up. I'll select the assembly and we'll give this a logical name. We're going to call this right side only. And since it's the right side only, I don't need any of this stuff on the left. I'll just select that and delete it. Perfect. Let's go back to our corridor now. I'll click the corridor and I'll go to corridor properties. And on the parameters tab, we'll take the middle region and I'm going to swap out the assembly with right side only. I'll click OK. We'll rebuild. Perfect. Next, I'm going to create a corridor for Summit Street. Let's do that. I'm going to create a new corridor for this. I'll launch the corridor command and I'll call this Summit Street. To build my corridor, I need an alignment, a profile, and assembly. So alignment, I'm going to use Summit Street. Now that I've chosen Summit Street, it's showing me the profiles associated with that alignment. I'm going to use Summit Street finished grade. And then for my assembly, I'll use full road section. For target surface, existing ground, because I do have simple daylights to the outside, set baseline and region parameters. Right now, let's leave that unchecked. I'll just go ahead and click OK. Don't bring up the dialog box. And you can see what happened. It ran the assembly the entire length of the alignment. Now, this area here I don't need. Really, I'd like to pull this back to the end of the curb return. So how can we do that? Let me select the corridor. I'll go to corridor properties. And you can see here's my region. Let me pull this down a little bit. So there's my baseline. There's my region. If I come down here, you can see the station of the start of the region and the end. Well, you can see that right now it matches the full length of the alignment. I would like my region to start rather than at 0, 0. I'd like to click the select button, and I'd like my region to start at the end point of the curb return. You can see there's the region start station now. Let me click OK. I'll rebuild. That's perfect. Now that we've seen that, now that we've done it in the parameters dialog box, the one-stop shop, let me show you another way that you could adjust these. See this grip on the end? Another thing I could have done, I could have just grabbed this grip and pulled this back to the end point there. That's another possibility as well. So now I've got my corridor coming up, I've got my corridor coming through. The only thing I have to do is take care of my returns. So here I have my edge of pavement elevation. I know what that is because the corridor is here. I have my edge of pavement elevation here. I need to create profiles for these alignments that I made to allow me to connect from the proposed edge of pavement, of both sides is what I have to do. Let's put a surface. We're going to make this easy. I'm going to put a surface on this corridor here, Barrington Avenue. I'll select it and I'm going to use a shortcut. I'll come up to corridor surfaces and I'll make a new surface. I'll call this Barrington Avenue top. And for surface style, we'll choose triangles 1 and 1 existing green. I want to triangulate to the top codes. We'll add those as break lines. We'll use our top links overhang correction. And I'm going to go to the boundaries tab and I'll add the corridor extents as outer boundary. Let's rebuild. So now I have a surface down here. Let's put a surface on Summit Street. I'll select this and I'll go to corridor surfaces. We'll make a new surface, Summit Street top. Display style, we'll do triangles 1 and 1 existing green. From the top links, we won't bother adding the extra feature lines just yet. If they're necessary, I'll put them in. Let me go ahead and click OK. We'll rebuild the corridor. So there we go. Okay, so I've got alignments now that I can use to get from one side to the other. Let's generate a profile. Very easy. Let's create first a surface profile for my northeast curb return. Let me select that. I'll come up and choose surface profile. I want to pull a surface profile through Barrington Avenue top, and I'll hold my control key, Summit Street top. I'll click add. So I'm pulling through the proposed surfaces. I will then select both of these profiles that I just sampled, and let's choose a style. By default, they want to be proposed grade. I'm going to make these existing grade for right now, just for visually on screen. I only want to create these on screen so I can create my proposed profiles, and this will make it easy to tell which profiles are coming from a surface sampling and which ones are being drawn using the layout tools. Let's choose Drawn Profile View. I'll choose Create Profile View, and then I'm going to place this one here in the upper right. Notice we can see it gives us a perfect gap. I can see exactly how I have to connect the dots to get around the corner, because it's given me the surface along here, and it's given me the surface along here. So I've got a nice gap there I can close. Let's go ahead and close it. I'll select the profile view, and then I'm going to come up and choose Profile Creation Tools. This allows me to create the proposed profile. I've got to give it a name. I'm going to click the template box, and then I'm going to say I want the alignment name -FG. So it's going to be called Northeast Curb Return -FG, essentially. Let's go with the proposed grade profile style and the FDOT design vertical exaggeration above labels. I'll click OK, and then I'm just going to do a straight line connection. I just want to do one slope through here. If you wanted to, if you wanted to put an inlet in or something, you could put PVIs in here, but since this is a tight intersection, I'm just going to do a continuous slope. So I'm going to use this tool on the end just to draw a straight line, and I'm going to go from the end point here to the end point there. Let's press enter. There we go. I'll press escape. Now we'll take care of the other side. First we'll create a surface profile. Surface profile for northwest curb return. I want to pull that. I'll hold my control key and I'll click. I want to pull it through both proposed surfaces. Let's change the style. I'm going to make these existing grade. That way they show up with the dashed line in the profile view. Let's draw on profile view, create profile view, and I'll create that profile view over here. Very easy to connect the dots. Let me click the profile view and I'll choose Profile Creation Tools. For the naming, I want to insert the alignment name -FG. I'll click OK. I'm going to keep the rest of the settings here, and I'm going to draw my proposed profile from the end point here to the end point there. I'll press enter, and then I'll click the X to close. So here's the nice thing. If Barrington Avenue or Summit Street change, these top surfaces will update, and I will see the changes here in the profile view, in which case I can just go through and make new connections to update the model. Okay, let's zoom in down here. I'm going to create an assembly now to close this up. Generally speaking, that assembly is going to be swept along this alignment. I'm going to create the assembly close here so we can see it. Let me click Assembly, Create Assembly, and I'm going to call this Curb Return. Assembly type, we're just going to leave this set to Other for right now. I'll click OK, and then I'll click to place that on screen. Let's put a Type F curb on this. I'll select the assembly and go to Tool Palette. Let's go to Curb and Gutter. I'll choose Type F curb, and I'd like to drop this on the right side. Let me make sure it's going to go to the right. There we go. I will click the marker to place that on the right, and then I'm going to put an FDOT lane. Let me go to Lanes, FDOT lane. I'm going to place that on the left. Now, since I already have a curb over here, it knows to put the lane on the left side. Let's adjust pavement thickness. Let me see if I have to. I'll look at my other assemblies. Yeah, it looks like I tweaked the thicknesses, so let's do that. I'll grab this one and I'll pull down, and we'll do 1.5, 1.564. Let's give this a logical name because we're going to be using targets with this. I'm going to call this return lane. There we go. The width and slope of this lane in the assembly doesn't matter because this outside corner right here is going to be targeting elevation, elevational and horizontal target for the entire time this thing's in use. Let me back up. Remember that I drew these alignments clockwise. So what I'm going to do is sweep this assembly along this alignment. It's going to create the curb and gutter to the outside. Remember, it's following the proposed elevation here to here, so it'll create my curb connection. And then I'm going to take the outside of this lane and I'm going to have it connect to the Barrington Avenue center line alignment until it gets to here, and then it'll go to Summit Street. So horizontally, it'll pull it out, and then I'll also have it follow the Barrington Avenue profile and Summit Street profile around the bend. Let's try that. I'm going to create a new corridor, and I'll call this returns. For my alignment, I'm going to follow the northeast curb return. For profile, I'm going to follow the northeast curb return finished grade. The assembly is going to be curb return. Target surface. Hey, I didn't put a daylight on there, so we'll take care of that in a little bit. Set baseline and region parameters. I am going to leave that checked this time. If I click OK, you can see that it takes me to the parameters tab and allows me to make my adjustments. Now, why did I go in here? Well, I don't want to sweep this assembly the entire length of that alignment. I only want it to start here and go to there. So by bringing up this dialog box, I can say start station. I'll grab the end point here, and the end station, I'm going to grab the end point there. So it's only going to build that much. Frequency, since we're in a nice tight curve here, I'm going to make the curve increments, we'll make it 3 feet. I'll come down and click OK. And then just for a second, I'll click OK. We'll rebuild and we'll see what we have. See how that's sweeping around, creating my curb and gutter? The only thing I have to do now is I have to get this lane edge out such that it meets my horizontal and vertical design in this area. So we're going to do that with targets. I'll click the corridor. I'll go to corridor properties, parameters. So here's the region that I swept the curb return around. I'm going to come down to the target ellipsis button, and for the return lane, I am going to set the lane width by horizontal targets. They're going to be alignments. I want you to follow Barrington Avenue, and I want you to follow Summit Street, whichever one is nearest. Let's click OK, and that gets me out where I need to be horizontally. Now let's take care of vertically. I'll click the profile. I want to follow the Barrington Avenue alignments, or the profile associated with Barrington Avenue alignment. We'll do the finished grade. And then I also want to follow a profile associated with Summit Street finished grade, whichever one's nearest. Let's click OK, OK, OK. Let's rebuild. That looks good. Just for a second, let's take a look at this in the object viewer. I'll select that and I'll click object viewer. And then I'm going to click the southeast hotspot here. I'm actually going to click it twice. That'll get it a little closer, and that many times that'll move the rotation point closer to the object. So now I can zoom in and rotate around and take a look at that. That looks really good. Let's close this, and we'll create the northwest curb return now. I'm just going to add this part to the corridor we just made. I'll add another baseline. Let me click the corridor, and I'll go to corridor properties. So here you can see what we've built already. I'm going to add another baseline. That baseline is going to be defined by the northwest curb return alignment. Remember, baselines are defined by horizontal and vertical. So here's the baseline. There's the northwest curb return alignment. Let's take care of the profile. That is going to be northwest curb return finished grade. Next, we'll add a region. I'm going to right click on the baseline and choose add region, and I want to add the curb return assembly to that region. There we go. Let's come down to frequency, curve increment of 3. Same as before. We'll take a look at what we have. I'll click OK. We'll rebuild. There we go. So you can see the new baseline's been added, and since it's clockwise, since I did them all clockwise, I was able to use the same assembly for both sides. I didn't have to have a left and a right. Let's take care of the targets. I'm going to go ahead and click my corridor, and let's do a shortcut this time. Rather than going into the corridor properties and finding the region and clicking the target, I can just come up and choose edit target, and then it says, okay, which region? You can see I've got two of them here. Oh, and I can see, notice this. I made a mistake. See how that region runs the full length? What did I do? I did not set my start and end station. We'll have to do that as well. Let me click in here. We'll take care of our targets. So for my target horizontally, you're going to follow Barrington Avenue and Summit Street, nearest. And then for elevational, you're going to target the Barrington Avenue finished grade profile. And let me choose Summit Street here. You're going to target the Summit Street finished grade profile, whichever one's nearest. Let me click OK. Now that's good, but you can see I've got extra corridor going on here that I don't need. So let's fix that. Let me click the corridor, and I'm going to go to corridor properties. So here's this region. You can see right now it's running the full length. I don't want that. For the start station, since it's clockwise, the start station is going to be the endpoint down here. And the end station will be the endpoint over here. There we go. Let's click OK. We'll rebuild. That looks better. Just to check it again, I'm going to select and go to Object Viewer. Let's click the southeast hotspot a couple times. There we go. Here's where I would have noticed that extra region. That's why it's always important after you build something to pull it up in the Object Viewer and take a look. Fantastic. Let's finish this up. We'll go all the way to where we have a surface model for everything. Let's put a simple daylight on this. I'm going to go to daylight, simple daylight, and we'll put that on the top back curb. Now we have to take care of those targets. So let me click the corridor properties, and I'm going to use the shortcut again. Well, you know what? Shortcut really won't help me too much here. I'm going to go to corridor properties. Let me do that. Because the entire corridor, I don't want to set the targets for an individual region. I want to use set all targets. This is where the set all targets is helpful. This shows me all the assemblies that are being used in the entire corridor here, and which is multiple baselines. I'm going to say, you know what? Everybody needs to follow the existing ground for a surface target. Let's click OK. OK. Rebuild. That looks good. Let's put a surface on this now. I'll click the corridor and we'll go to corridor surfaces. I want to create a new one. We'll call it returns surface top. Surface style, we'll do 1-in-1 existing green. I want to add the top links. We'll use our top links overhang correction, and we'll do the corridor extents as outer boundary. We'll rebuild. Let's take a look. Maybe we'll have to add some feature lines. Maybe we won't. We'll go to Object Viewer and we'll find out. Now this looks good. My triangulation looks nice around the bend there. Finally, let's create one set of triangles for this entire model. I'm going to just paste all three of these surfaces into one surface. Let's hide the surfaces that I have already. I'm just going to select these three, and I'll come over to my properties palette and I'll change their style to no display. So now we can't see them. We'll create a new surface and we'll call it composite. Let's choose a style for this. We'll do 1-in-1 existing orange, just to be a little bit different. And then under prospector, we'll find that surface, composite. I'm going to expand it. I'll expand its definition, and I'll come down to edits. I'm going to right click on edits, and then I'll choose paste surface. I want to paste all of these top surfaces. I'll just hold my control key and pick them all. I want to paste all of those top surfaces into composite. So composite's getting its triangulation from the other surfaces. The other nice thing is even though I've pasted those in, it's still maintaining a dynamic link to those other surfaces. So if the corridor models change, doesn't matter, this composite will always be updated. So now that I've got one set of triangles, let's go to Object Viewer. Let's tip this up into 3D. We'll zoom in, orbit this around, and it looks like everything is connecting perfectly. When I'm finished reviewing the model and the surface, I'll click the X to close the Object Viewer. So in this session, we learned how we can tie two corridors together. In this case, we did it by creating a couple corridors We created alignment and profile for our curb returns. This is a common way to make connections between corridors. Finally, after creating the corridor models, we were able to merge everything together into a single set of triangles by creating a composite surface and pasting the surfaces from the other corridors into the overall surface.